Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am in Camarillo, California with Dusty Nabor of the eponymous Dusty Nabor Wines, or Nabor Wines. Dusty, welcome to Wine Soundtrack, and tell us a little bit about your winery.
So, Camarillo, California, the center of winemaking.
Not quite.
Yeah, not quite, but, I'm trying to change things. So Nabor Wines was started in 2015, and like you said, it's my eponymous name. It's Dusty Nabor Wines. I actually have a couple different labels that we'll get into after that. But yeah, I come from the consumer side, and I used to collect wines. I had a friend who lived up in San Francisco who introduced me to wines in the early 2000s, I would say. And it wasn't until much later that I discovered what wine could be and decided to look into possibly making my own wine. Found out that there was a local custom crush that was right by me where you could make wine on the side. And like all things I do, it just absolutely snowballed over the last 8 years. And now, with 3 labels, 3,000 cases from 2 barrels 8 years ago. So
wow, 2 barrels to 3,000 cases.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. So tell me, what kind of wines do you make? What grapes do you work with?
Sure. I work throughout the San Ynez Valley. So Santa Barbara County, we do one wine out of Paso, but that wine is actually made in Paso. But the vast majority of what we do is Santa Barbara County, San Ynez Valley. So spanning all the way in the west in the Santa Rita Hills, all the way to the west end of the Santa Rita Hills, all the way out to Happy Canyon in the east. So, and we do primarily Pinot, Chardonnay, and Grenache out of the Santa Rita Hills. Moving west or east, we get into Ballard Canyon where we do Viognier and Syrah, and then out to Los Olivos District in Happy Canyon where we do Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot, and Malbec.
Wow, a nice range of wines. And we should say that Camarillo is in Ventura County, just outside of Santa Barbara County. So a good, you got about an hour drive up into wine country, but not too far into wine country here. So you're making a lot more wine now. Where are your wines available? Are they in different markets? Are they 100% direct to consumer?
So the markets are very eclectic because I never solicit my wines. I never go out and try and sell them. So the people that have acquired them have done so by contacting me. So there's no rhyme or reason to the marketing. So a lot of the NSO and Dusty Nabor wines are available in Texas at Specs. Some are available in Alberta, Canada through an importer up there. Some are available in Costa Rica from an importer there. But the vast majority of the wines that we sell are direct to consumer through our mailing list.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Whoa, going back. So I had a long period where I was just like everybody else and knew nothing about wine. I would say my first memory going back would be buying Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio and Alpha Beta. I most people probably don't even remember that supermarket, but that was my first memory of wine, of going and like being, hey, I think I maybe should try this or something. And I do remember maybe 25 years ago, when the internet was like just starting out, like trying to figure out what the different grapes were so that I wasn't a complete fool. If I took someone on a date, I could kind of work a wine list. And then, like I mentioned, my friend who lived in San Francisco, who I was doing business with in a different industry, introduced me to real wine and what wine could be, the potential of wine. And then that's when I started collecting a little bit. I was really into like Napa cabs and things like that.
Of course.
Yeah, typical wine bro, like scores and all that stuff. And then it matured from there to the point where I started making it, and now my tastes have completely changed in the last few years.
Well, so now that you have, well, okay, I was going to say, what do you have in your cellar? Like, what would you say is one of the most valuable wines? You got some of those Napa Colt cabs still hidden in there?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of 100 Acre. I have a lot of 100 Acre from like 2009 to 2013. I have a couple bottles of Screaming Eagle in there that are kind of fun to look at. Don't think I'd ever open them though. And then some other, like Schrader and the people like that.
Okay, so moving aside from those, kind of bro wines, which I'm sure drink really well.
Oh, yeah.
What was one of the most, memorable wines you drank?
So yeah, it has to be a bro wine. I did think about this question. It is a 2007 100 Acre Kaylee Morgan, and it's very specific. It was a very specific event. It was not event, but moment. It was, I believe it was either my birthday or my girlfriend Karen's birthday, and we had that wine, and that was the first time I ever got emotional about a wine, where it really the setting, the food, the event, the moment all came together to where it was a truly transcendent moment, and where I truly felt like, oh man, I don't get what's going on, but now I fully understand why wine has its own category, why it's not just a beverage, why it can be so much more. That was the moment, the epiphany moment, where I'm like, yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, context does play a huge part in that. So is there something that you opened recently that drank really well?
Yeah. Last night I opened a Hanada 2015 Desafio. That's their Cabernet Sauvignon dominant Ballard Canyon blend. And I opened a Ramey Cellars Riccioli Chardonnay 2018. They're both beautiful wines.
Yeah, you drink really well at home.
It wasn't at home.
Oh.
I was out for a get together of friends from another life, endurance sports, doing endurance sports.
Ooh, we'll have to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
I'm curious, if we come to your home now, aside from those sort of big Napa wines that you have in there, what else would we find? What regions, what grapes?
Yeah, you'd find a lot of Santa Barbara County. I love to support my friends, and I know not everybody feels this, but the best way to support is just buy the wine. just give them your money. That is the best way to support a winery. And I don't ever ask, most of the time I buy them incognito and don't ever ask for industry discounts or anything like that. But in my cellar, you would find a lot of Santa Rita Hills Chardonnay and Pinot. I love those. A lot of Syrah from Ballard Canyon. I mean, yeah. But then I also have, I really like being a member of like Viticole Wine Club. He has a lot of eclectic, like Envenati from the Canary Islands and things like that just really, again, start to reshape how you think about wine and what wine can be. I really like, things that come out of like the Rioja and things like that just challenge your perception of wine.
Right. So do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No, I don't. I think that, there's no such thing as perfection, but I think that the ideal of perfection drives a journey to be perfect. So in wine, whether it be starting at the very beginning and planting the perfect variety for a site, mm-hmm. or trying to make a variety in a certain way or the perfect way, creates in and of itself a journey to be able to do that, and you'll never get to the end. So that to me is kind of the way I approach life in general and winemaking, where I'm in it for the day-to-day. I'm not in it for the end result. So that the desire to become better and to make wines that reflect me and the people that grow them more is what pushes me every day and makes it worthwhile. The finished product is, okay, it's almost like we were going to talk about endurance sports. It's very much like endurance sports. Endurance sports like triathlon or swimming or running or cycling isn't necessarily super fun while you do it. It can be very monotonous. It can be very hard, but all good things come from a little bit of struggle. And the end finish or the wine product is almost like the race. Like you spend months and months and years building up to a race, and then you do it and accomplish it. It's not over. The journey goes on. Exactly. And it's the same thing in the winery. Like, the journey goes on. Even if I make a wine where I'm like, that's it. I did it. I did exactly what I wanted to do. It's like, okay, well,
you have a new vintage.
Exactly. You got a new vintage, you got different varieties, you got different vineyards, and you just move on and do something else.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me day to day motivated to continually get better at what I do.
Well, so as a small producer and someone who is, constantly moving forward with that kind of mentality, but knowing where you started, where scores played a part. What's your opinion today on wine critics and scores?
It kind of depends on the context. I think that they are super valuable in a couple of areas. So, the vast majority of people that drink wine don't give a shit about wine. It's a fruity alcohol delivery system, and that's why if you look at numbers, the largest case productions in supermarkets are under $10. They're massively produced, and that's fine, because if you look at us, I don't care about some consumer products as well. Like when I go buy a toaster, I just want someone to tell me what the best toaster is. I don't care about toasters. But there's some dude that makes Toaster Magazine that's all his life is.
Right.
And wine is the same thing. So with scores, it gives you a terminology, a barometer, and a way to quickly communicate to the consumer a score of quality. And I think that's what a lot of people misunderstand about scores, is that a score doesn't tell you anything about how a wine tastes. It tells you the quality of the wine, and it also doesn't have anything to do with wine preference. Those are two completely different things. That's why you hear people say, oh, drink what you want. Yeah, you can prefer a low quality wine. That's 100% valid.
Right.
But that doesn't automatically make it a high quality wine. It just makes it a wine you prefer. So scores give us a way to talk about wine quality in a quick fashion. Like, so how was that wine? I don't know. Jeb Dunnick gave it a 95. Immediately, we are both on the same page that this is a high quality wine. It's a very good wine. I think, in my opinion, I know this is a very unpopular opinion, that critics are very consistent. If you look at the breadth of the amount of wines that they taste, and you look at the scores that they give, they're incredibly consistent with what they do. And I think that they're a good representation, especially to people that are new to wine, don't really understand the nuances of wine. But on the opposite side of the same coin, they can be problematic when you start to learn a lot more about wine.
Right.
So when you get a really intelligent consumer, scores just kind of become it is what it is. It's what that critic thought on that day, and it has less of an impact on somebody that's actually educated.
Right. Well, it loses the context of also understanding your own palate and the environment, the food, the atmosphere, all the reasons why that wine might sing to someone today is not necessarily about a score.
Exactly. It doesn't convey any of that. And I think that people put a lot of emphasis on the score as if it did convey all of the attributes of that wine, which it absolutely does not. I mean, it's just one moment in time where they look at the wine and they build their score through whatever parameters they have devised as being the benchmarks for that variety and region, and it gets built up. And I mean, that's fine. Like I said, it's great.
So for you as a wine drinker or consumer, red, white, or rosé?
Most of the time white.
Still or sparkling?
Still. My stomach doesn't really agree with bubbles all that much. Like champagne, I love the taste of it, but I'd rather spit it out.
That's the one thing I don't like spitting is bubbles.
For me, it makes my stomach unsettled.
So we talked a little bit about context, and obviously when we drink wines, in that moment you had that 100-acre wine and how it was just everything about it. So you were at dinner last night, you had 2 great wines. Tell me, how do you approach food and wine pairing? Are you looking for the wines you want to drink and, it is what it is, or are you pairing with food? And if you're pairing with food, do you follow rules, or what are you doing?
No, I don't really follow rules. I will say that most of the time, I'll just use yesterday as a great example. I walk into my cellar and I look around at what I want to drink. I'm not even thinking about the dinner because I know that, it'll work. It'll work with what we're doing. Having said that, I will say that when a wine pairing hits, it can be unbelievable.
Yes.
Absolutely unbelievable. I think that there is a lot of science and intuition behind food and wine pairings. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Well, it's one of those things, it is subjective in the end. In the end, it's subjective whether or not it has worked. You could have all the science you want and pairing flavors with different types of wines and different types of structures in wine. But when it does work, it can be very magical. But I don't personally, I don't really think about it. I more think about what I want to drink that night.
But then when, for dinner last night, obviously you had a white and a red, so you had some selection. But then do you look at the menu and think, what's going to work with the wines I have?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, it just kind of works out that way. Like the lighter fare usually comes at the beginning, so we do a white. I will say that though, when I do my tastings, I do put the whites at the end. So I'm a little bit backwards in that from an American standpoint. From a French standpoint, it's fairly normal to do that.
Right.
But I do like to put whites at the end when we're just tasting wine. But for a dinner, I'm usually pretty standard. White, Pinot, maybe a Syrah or Cab at the end. That's as much thought as I put into it.
A very nice progression.
Exactly.
Simple.
Yeah, I just give a progression of the weight of the wine. Really, is all I'm doing.
Well, so for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to taste dusty Nabor wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
They're missing out on me. That's
and if you haven't heard, this is what you would get. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, wine is a reflection of the people, place, and time that it was made. It's one of those beverages that can be transcendent. It can be ethereal, and if you don't have context, I don't think that wine creates that magic. So realistically, I make fair to good wines. I don't think I've made anything great to this point. So when someone comes and tastes my wines, they're really making the connection, the human connection between me and what I have created. Mm-hmm. So they're missing out on that reflection that they may want to see. They may be interested in how we do things here, how the farmers that we work with grow their grapes, that kind of stuff. And then I'm handing them a representation of that they can actually consume.
Right.
And then it gives you this kind of transcendent touch into my life and the way that we do things here. And I think that's the same with any winery. Like, you want to go and figure out what they're doing and then try this product that is the culmination of their efforts. And so, yeah, so if it specifically, I wouldn't say like, oh, they're missing out on the greatest Pinot in the world. I just wouldn't say that. I'd just be like, yeah, you're missing out on what I'm trying to do here and the reflection I'm trying to give you.
So if space aliens were to knock on your door here, we're in an industrial park here where you have your winery, but if they were to show up at your door right now, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with to say, welcome to Nabor Wines?
Oh, that's a tough one. It would have to be probably our Kimsey Syrah. I think of all of the wines that I've made, the Kimsey Syrah has developed the way I envisioned it. So it really is a reflection of what I wanted to do. Because, we don't really make wine. The microbes make the wine. We just give it an environment. And they kind of do their thing. And I'm really a hands-off winemaker and really lazy. So I don't do anything. And so when a wine turns out the way I envisioned it from the beginning, it's really satisfying. So I think that would have to be the wine I would give them. But I may inquire what kind of wine they have on their home planet. And
just to get a context.
Yeah, just kind of get a context. I wouldn't want to give them a really weird Syrah when all they drink is like supermarket Cab. So I would tailor it to them.
So you said you're kind of a lazy winemaker, or maybe more of a minimal interventionist, mm-hmm. we could say. But I'm curious if you have established any sort of good luck rituals that you do at the start of harvest. I
am the most ritualistic person ever. I do not do anything out of superstition. I'm very habitual, but I don't do anything weird. No, I don't. Mm-hmm. Nope.
Not even not weird, just you stop shaving, or you open champagne on the first day, or I don't know, no traditions at all.
Yeah, no traditions at all. I don't ever think about it. It's just when it happens, and off we go. And I may be a little bit different because I am the sole employee. Like, I don't have anybody out there. So, like, at the beginning of harvest, when I pull up with my grapes, there's nobody to share the moment with. I get out of my truck and I unstrap the grapes. So I guess I could stand in the parking lot by myself and, like, spray a bottle of champagne, but it would be a little weird.
Or a little pat on the back.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you don't own any vineyards, and you're purchasing fruit from a number of different vineyards. But in the years that you've been working and you're specific in an area, we know that every vintage tells a story. But have you found in your experience that you see more commonality vintage to vintage, or do you see greater variation?
I see a lot more commonality. I think if you're not seeing commonality, then you kind of lose terroir. In wine, we talk about, like, the nuance. It's the last 1 or 2% that is all we talk about in wine. Wine is 85% water and 15% alcohol, and it's the last little tiny bit that we all talk about and makes the big difference. And I think that I love vintage variation, but the wines need to have a core of commonality coming from the same place, same variety, if we're talking about the same block, all that stuff. It needs to be more common than different. And then in the nuance lies the vintage differences. And that's why I don't change a lot with what I do in the winery, because I liked those through lines that say this wine comes from this place. And the majority of what you're getting is that. And then the vintage, the difference in the vintage, whether it be weather or whatever, is the nuance, is the tiny bit.
Okay. And so do you find that there are any sort of signs or predictors that you look for that are going to tell you what a vintage is going to give you?
No, because I don't look for them. I don't care. I honestly don't care, because my idea with this is to reflect what happens. And whatever happens is going to happen. Weather is we can't control it. Obviously, I'm not saying we don't care and that we just walk away from the vineyard. We're obviously making moves and doing what it requires.
But you're more reactive than
Yes, we're reactive to, depending on whether it's forecasted or something that happens that we haven't anticipated, we'll react. If it's forecasted, we'll be proactive and do things maybe a little bit differently based on the weather. But I don't look like, it doesn't matter to me. It whatever happens, and I hope it's good, and I hope the consumers like it, but I will never hide it. Like, I want to show it. I want to show what happened that year. So in the wines.
So, we sometimes hear about producers that walk in the vineyards and talk to their vines, and sometimes they do here. You're all alone here.
Yeah.
Have you been, they say if a tree falls in a forest, who knows exactly what happens, but do you ever talk to your barrels and your wine?
Yeah, I have. So the worst thing that I ever did is put in security cameras. And it has been a constant source of humiliation when Karin gets on and watches the security cameras, because I do verbalize a lot. Now I'm not like trying to coax the wines to do whatever I want, or to change them or whatever. I don't try to do that, or some people play music and say that the resonance of the music goes through the wine. I think they do that in Argentina or whatever, but I don't do that. But I do. Like, when something pisses me off, I'll yell at it like a little kid, and things like that. Like, what the hell? Walking through vineyards, because it's mostly just me. Karin goes with me sometimes, but yeah, I will walk through vineyards, and it'll be more like conversational. Like, oh, what's this? What are you doing? And expecting a reaction from the vine. Like, so rhetorical
questions.
Yeah, rhetorical questions. Exactly.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, obviously, you were talking about doing endurance sports. Wine was not your first career, but, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Oh, gosh. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a fireman. But then I figured out that I just liked starting fires as a little kid. I didn't really want to be a fireman. And now, and then you learn what being a fireman actually is, and I could never, ever do that. My life has gone through so many phases, because I get, we alluded to this earlier about how things in my life just snowball, and they do. I mean, I just take things really seriously, and I've done that all my life. So, in high school, it was all about extreme sports like skateboarding, surfing, snowboarding, things like that, and took surfing to quite a high level, and then got into motocross and took off-road racing and motocross to a very high level, and then got sick of getting hurt on a motocross bike because I realized I had to go to work. So then I got into auto racing for a while and did that and took that to a pretty high level, and golf for a long time. And then about 15 years ago, I got into triathlon and endurance sports. And that's been my life. That's actually how Karin and I met. We were on a national amateur team.
Wow.
And so we were social media buddies for a while, and then I had to travel through the Midwest, and she's a Chicago native. So we hooked up there. She came out here, realized that the weather is much better out here. It doesn't take long, and moved out here. So I've done a lot of things in my life so far, and wine, I may have hid a few of those hobbies under the guise of a business, but this is actually a business. This actually works. You know, when you put car racing under a business and all it is shoveling money into a fireplace, it doesn't work. You know, after a while, you're like, what am I doing? But this actually has done quite well from a business standpoint. So,
well, it's a business, and also to what you were saying about how it's always changing and every vintage is different. It seems that, you know, because you're constantly moving forward and not, you know, making wine one year is not the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Because, as you were saying, you may never tire of doing this.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe if I get some help too, I'd probably add some longevity to it as well.
So when you're not working, how do you spend your free time? Are you just training for triathlons all the time?
So, no. We have semi-retired from triathlon. So the cool thing about triathlon is when you get sick of doing triathlons, because they're logistically very difficult, you can kind of splinter off and do the 3 sports individually. So right now we're mostly run training. Karin just ran Boston Marathon. I did all the training with her, but I have no plans to do a marathon, so I'll just roll this run fitness into something. But yeah, it's mostly like fitness oriented, or, you know, I have a day job, so to speak. I basically have 2 full-time jobs. But so I spend a lot of my time running and cycling and swimming.
What industry is your day job in?
Steel pipe, family steel business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've been doing that for 30 years.
You are just more fascinating and more fascinating as we talk. So when you're planning a romantic evening for you and Karin, what sort of wines get open to set the mood?
Karin is along for the ride. So she, as far as wine's concerned, she really lets me do what I want, and I kind of do it the same way I did it last night. I just go into my cellar and I look at what's interesting and what's maybe rolling around to a window where it might be even more interesting. I'm not a huge proponent of like drink windows or wait. So, you know, we're not getting any younger. We're not going to be around. And there's a lot of bottles in that cellar. So I look at stuff and be like, yeah, it's got a little bit of age on it. Should be showing well. And I try to get through wines because I don't actually drink a lot. Like I spit a ton.
Yeah.
And but I don't actually consume a lot of wine. So when I get into my cellar, I'm like, I kind of got to get through this. I kind of got to get going here. So yeah, I mean,
I know the feeling.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people do. I think, but they don't. It's never identified as a problem. Like, you have a big cellar, you're like, yeah, I got a big cellar, it's great, I can do what I want. But at a certain point, I'm like, yeah, if I'm gonna get through this, I need to start hustling here a little bit.
And the problem is when you have other friends that also have that same problem.
Yes,
every time you go to dinner, it's a fight of who's gonna bring wine.
Exactly. And I'm always like itching for more people to come because then I can bring more wine. Yeah.
So, endurance sports, are you also into team sports of any kind?
No. I think the last team sport I did was football in high school. I played Pop Warner football, and then in high school I played football. And
are you a supporter of any team sports?
Not really. I'm like a fair weather fan because I like domination. I love it when a team dominates to the point where there's no question that they're the best. And sure, anybody can lose on any given day, but when they lose, you're like, yeah, that was a fluke. They're the best. So I was like so when I was really into golf, I really loved Tiger Woods. Like, I loved that he was far and away, clearly the best golfer on the planet, and everybody knew it, and that was that. And I'm a super fan of that. I love it when they prove the point to everybody that they're the best.
So if Tiger Woods were to win another championship, which of your wines would you want to congratulate him with?
Oh.
Ooh.
I don't know. I think he's kind of a wine bro. I think I'd have to open up like a Cabernet. I'd have to give him a 20. I give him a 2020 Los Olivos District Cabernet. Yeah.
So obviously you have worked in a number of industries and had a number of activities and jobs and everything. Is there a piece of advice that someone gave you at some point, a family, a teacher, a mentor, that is something you try to apply to everything you do? Or maybe more specific?
No, not a single piece of advice. I just think that whatever you do, tenacity is a good trait to have. But I also am pretty easygoing on myself. and I have a good perspective on things. I'm only going to use winemaking because there's a lot of different things that this could apply to. But winemaking is kind of a roller coaster. It's like an emotional roller coaster, and you always think that you messed up because wine's always evolving, and every time you go taste it, you're either elated or you're totally depressed. And I think that having perspective on why you do things, and endurance sports is another good analogy because endurance sports can be very hard. And if you think of it as like motivation like doesn't get you through endurance sports training. Like you can't have this like goal of this singular motivation, like watch a Rocky movie and get all amped up. Like an hour into a bike ride, that Rocky movie's gonna fade and you're gonna be done. And I think it's better to have a perspective on why you're doing it and the long goal of the journey. Like I enjoy doing this day in and day out, and you get so much benefit from doing something day in and day out with enjoyment. Like, and it's the same thing in the winery, like coming here and constantly thinking about what you could do better. And honestly, that may be nothing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in winemaking, it's nothing. Stop doing stuff. Stop opening barrels. Stop trying to change things. Be confident in the decisions that you made before. So, I mean, yeah, just I've never really gotten a piece of advice that I would go back to, but I do have, mentors that have shaped the way that I look at things, and I think that that's more powerful because it lasts longer.
Absolutely. So when you look back at your career, and it's a varied and storied career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date? Because I know you're not finished and you're still moving forward, but what would you look back on and say?
With regards to wine?
Oh, maybe it's something else.
I would say just being here and having this winery is one of my greatest accomplishments. It's probably the biggest, business that I've started by myself. It's completely by myself, and it's seems to be working. And I think that's the best you can hope, for a young winery to be able to function and continue on is a gift, and I think it's a decent accomplishment.
I think it's a very valid accomplishment. So complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
A table without wine is like... Man, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's... I don't know. It's kind of sterile. It's kind of boring. A table without wine is just boring. It's just, yeah.
So now we're at a table, your wine's on the table, and there's an empty seat next to you. Who from any walk of life, living or deceased, would you want to share a bottle of your wine with?
Abraham Lincoln. I know it off the top of my head. That he is, I know it's cliche. It's like Abraham Lincoln, but it's, if you really look at it, he is such an amazing human being. Orator and writer, and just absolutely fascinating human being that I would love to, actually hear him talk, actually sit down with him and share a glass of wine with. I think he would be amazing. I was over in Scotland, and in Scotland in a cemetery, there's a statue of Abraham Lincoln.
So you talked to him?
Yeah. I just think it would be so cool to be able to actually talk to Abraham Lincoln.
So we're getting towards the end of our talk, which has been really fun. I could keep going forever, but just a couple other questions. Another thought-provoking one. We know that climate change is something we talk about. It is affecting everything. And in the wine industry, you think we're going to be drinking wine in 300 years, 500 years?
I believe so. I think vines are survivors, and they really know what to do when the weather gets weird. And that's why they're around for 100 years. And
longer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, longer than that, And I always, it's kind of funny. Like anytime you see like a house and it's run down and nobody's lived there for 100 years, there's vines all over it. Like they're just so great at surviving that we'll adjust and we'll figure out what we need to do. I don't think it's going to change as much of what we do. I think the human impact will be worse than the wine impact.
Well, and if it were all to end today and you were sent off to a deserted island, what 3 wines would you want to take with you? Any 3 wines.
It'd have to be Chave Syrah. That's going. White, I don't know, DRC Montrachet.
Yeah, because why not?
Why not? I'm totally. And then I'd have to do probably like a West End Pinot Noir, West End of the Santa Rita Hills, like towards the ocean, out by the ocean. Maybe a Hilt Pinot Noir, something like that. A Radian Pinot. Let's do that. Radian.
And you source from there too.
I do.
Yeah. Well, now we're going to have a little fun, end of the game. I warned you about this. It's called Wine Soundtrack. So just to finish it off, we're going to talk about a few of your wines, and I want you to pair them with music. So let's start with your Radian Pinot Noir.
Oh, God, that's a brooding Pinot Noir. Everyone always accuses me of mixing it with Syrah. Just because that's like the cliche thing to do, like whatever.
Right. No, we know, but it's a pure Pinot Noir.
Oh, totally, pure Pinot Noir, but windswept and super inhospitable environment. I mean, it's Rancho Los Puedes, which I'm told, because I don't speak Spanish, means get out if you can, or something to that effect. But it's a very inhospitable vineyard. You got to have 4-wheel drive to get up there. So I'm gonna pair
It looks like Mars.
Yeah, exactly. They call it the Pinot Bowl. Let's pair that with something hardcore like Metallica. We'll do Metallica. I really like Sanitarium.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I like that. Ooh, I just threw you right out there. Then you said you're also doing Chardonnay from Santa Rita Hills.
Yeah, Chardonnay, Hilliard Bruce Vineyard. That is what we get out of the Santa Rita Hills, which is briny, salty, acidic chard. I don't know. Let's do something yacht rocky. let's do Sail Away.
Sail Away.
Yeah,
I like
let's do that.
Ooh. And what about your Santa Rita Hills Grenache, a cool climate Grenache?
Well, we do the Grenache 100% whole cluster. It's very herbaceous. It is an ethereal expression of Grenache. So if you're used to, say, Paso or Chateauneuf de Pape or something like that, it's much more. I'm not comparing the two, but it's much more on the Pinot side of things. A little transparent through the glass. Pairing that with music would have to be. I kind of always walk the line with that wine. It's because Grenache can be finicky and it can be a tough wine to actually make. It's really prone to oxidation. So let's do Johnny Cash. I walk the line.
Walk the line.
Yeah,
because you walk the line with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. How about, because this is kind of fun because I'm getting descriptors of your wines with it, your Kimsey Syrah.
Kimsey Syrah, oh God, that one's got to be a weird song. It's got to be, because Kimsey Syrah, that was the one that turned out like magical. Again, 100% whole cluster. It smells like, the aromas are like walking into a flower shop. Like a florist is just cutting up stems and you have that beautiful, like, some people, when they talk about green notes, they talk about bell pepper and pyrazines. This is not that. This is more like fresh green and flowers, very earthy. But it pisses off about 20% of people that try it.
Oh.
So, and I love that. I love that about it, that about 20% of people just don't get it. And so I call it a behind the table wine. Like all the winemakers are like, oh my God, this is so awesome. But on the other side, people are like, oh, this is really weird. And I love that. So, I don't know, maybe like some Daft Punk song or something like that.
Good job. Yeah. I'm licking my lips. I want to try that wine, so I'd probably want to be behind the table. Well, Dusty, you have been fantastic. It's been really fun chatting with you. I have a 2-part ender question for you. The first is, what wine region in the world is the top of your bucket list to explore?
To explore, I would say my top wine region by far is the hill at Hermitage. Like standing on that hill is, to me, and the pinnacle of wine. And I have stood in front of like DRC and that's pretty cool too. Don't get me wrong. But like the hill at Hermitage and the little town of Tonle-Hermitage is just so perfect. Like, I love it. It's just with the river going through, it's just so awesome.
Is there somewhere you haven't been that you want to go?
Yeah, I would really love, this came up a little bit earlier, but I would really love to go to the Canary Islands and see the volcanic vineyards that they out there. That would be very cool.
Cool. Now, for someone who wants to come and taste your wines, you are not open to the public. This is just an industrial winemaking facility. How can people find Dusty Nabor wines? Like, do they just go online? Where do they find you?
Yeah, sure. So the website is dustynaborwines.com. We release our wines 3 to 4 times a year through our mailing list. And our mailing list operates in that there's no wait list or anything like that, but the wines mostly sell out on release. Not all of them, but most of them sell out within the 2-week release period. The mailing list is free to join, and basically it's like your ticket to be able to buy the wine before they sell out. You decide how much you want to buy. There's no allocations. It's just me letting you know, hey, these wines are available. They're only available to people that log into the mailing list, so you can purchase the wines at that time. If you want to try the wines, we do some events. We're at the Garagiste Festival pretty regularly. I do some local events. That's kind of the best way to try the wines because, like you say, we aren't open to the public. But you can always hit me up. I'm very accessible, through the website or whatnot. And then we also have another brand called NSO Wines that stands for No Special Occasion. And those are more value-driven wines. And I'm very sorry to say that right now there's nothing available, but I'm working on getting more wines under that label up and on the website. Those come out they don't go to the mailing list. Just when they're ready, they go up on the website and they're available to purchase on the website.
Well, you just have to stay, up on your game
exactly.
Well, Dusty, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a little fun.
Yep.
And
thanks for coming by. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll have to go get some wine to cheers.
Sure. Awesome. Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.